Hey everyone, and welcome back to Key Safety Talks. We're tackling a pretty hot topic today.
Yeah,
It's something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately, and I'm sure it's on a lot of your minds too.
for sure.
We're talking about extreme work hours and the impact they have on workplace safety and just overall employee well-being.
Yeah.
We've got a whole stack of research and articles right here in front of us.
hmm
And I got to tell you, some of the stuff we found is pretty eye-opening, to say the least.
It's a very timely discussion, I think.
Yeah.
We're even seeing some folks out there actually suggesting a 90-hour work week.
Yeah, a 90-hour work week.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it, right?
90 hours. It just sounds intense.
Yeah,
Like, where do you even fit in
right.
life at that point,
Yeah.
you know? But I guess the argument is all about productivity,
Yeah,
More hours equals more output,
that's the idea.
which could then give companies this competitive edge.
Right, and that's definitely the narrative they're pushing. But I think if you look a little deeper,
Yeah.
the research really starts to paint a different picture.
Okay.
There's a real concern that this whole focus on hours worked ignores the human cost completely.
Right. It's like you can't just push people to their limits
It's
constantly.
just not sustainable.
Right.
It's like trying to run a marathon at a sprint pace eventually.
Yeah.
You hit a wall.
You're going to hit a wall for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that wall.
Okay.
What are some of the specific risks
Yeah.
that we're seeing with these extreme work hours?
I think the most immediate risk is to workplace safety.
Okay.
When people are exhausted, their reaction times slow down.
Of course.
They're not paying attention as well, and they're just not making the best decisions.
Right. They're not thinking clearly.
Exactly. It's a recipe for accidents, especially in industries with, heavy machinery
Yeah.
or hazardous materials.
And those accidents can be pretty serious.
Absolutely.
Didn't we have a source here that actually mentioned Chernobyl?
We did, yeah. One of the studies highlighted the Chernobyl disaster.
Wow.
And, while there were a lot of contributing factors,
Sure.
operator fatigue from those extended shifts was definitely a factor.
Okay, so we're not just talking about,
Yeah.
like a paper cut here.
No,
This-
you're talking about potentially catastrophic events.
Yeah, that puts it into perspective.
Absolutely. And then beyond the immediate safety risks, there's the long-term impact on mental health.
Right.
This chronic stress
Yeah,
can really do a number on you.
for sure.
It can lead to anxiety, depression, burnout.
And burnout is a whole
And burnout is a whole other thing.
other beast. Yeah.
It's not just about being tired.
No.
It's about feeling completely depleted and just totally disengaged.
And how can you work
Right.
if you're feeling that way?
And that's exactly the point. You can't,
Yeah.
one of the sources we have here actually puts a dollar figure on it.
Okay.
A study by Harvard Business School estimated that burnout costs the U.S. economy somewhere between $125 and $190 billion a year
Whoa. And
in healthcare spending and lost productivity.
a big chunk of change.
It's massive.
Yeah. So pushing for these crazy long hours might actually backfire in the end.
I think that's what the research suggests.
Interesting.
They might see a little bump in output temporarily,
Sure.
but it's not sustainable. People get sick, they make mistakes, they burn out,
Yeah.
and ultimately it hurts the company's bottom line.
Yeah. No one wins.
Nobody wins.
So if this 90-hour work week is so problematic, are there other options out there?
Yeah,
Because work still needs to get done.
of course, and that's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
There are countries, particularly in Scandinavia,
Okay.
that have a very different approach
Okay.
to work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
They typically have shorter work weeks,
Sure.
sometimes as low as 30 hours,
Wow.
and yet they maintain really high levels of productivity
Really?
and employee satisfaction.
Okay, so what's their secret? Do they just work super efficiently or?
It's more about a cultural shift.
Okay.
They really prioritize employee well-being
Mm-hmm.
and recognize that rest and rejuvenation are crucial for productivity.
So it's not about
You-
squeezing every ounce
It's not about squeezing every ounce of
of productivity.
productivity.
That's
It's
smart.
about recognizing that people need time to recharge,
Yeah.
to come back and do their best work.
That makes a lot of sense.
They also invest heavily in things like childcare and social safety nets,
Okay.
which reduces stress and allows people to focus on their work.
So you're creating this environment
Yeah,
where people feel supported
exactly.
so they can actually focus on their work.
Exactly. And there's growing interest in this approach, even in countries with traditionally longer work hours.
So it's starting to catch on.
It is, we've
Yeah.
seen experiments with 4-day work weeks popping up all over the place.
Really?
And the initial results are really promising.
So shorter work weeks, happier employees, and potentially no loss in productivity.
That's the idea.
That sounds like a win-win to me.
It does.
So tell me more about these 4-day workweek experiments.
Yeah.
What kind of companies are trying this out, and what are they actually seeing?
It's actually a pretty diverse range of companies, from tech startups to manufacturing firms.
Interesting.
One company that comes to mind is Perpetual Guardian.
Okay.
It's a New Zealand-based firm.
Okay.
They tested a 4-day work week for 2 months
Okay.
and found that employee stress levels dropped significantly,
Good.
while productivity actually went up by 20%.
20%. That's impressive.
It is.
So what were employees doing with that extra day off? Were they just slacking off, or did they find ways to be more productive?
The interesting thing is they reported using that time for things like personal development, spending time with family, pursuing hobbies.
Okay.
And it seems that by having that time to recharge and de-stress, they came back to work more focused and energized.
So they're coming back refreshed
Exactly.
and ready to
And ready to contribute.
contribute. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, work to live, don't live to work.
Absolutely. And it challenges the assumption that the only way to be productive is to be constantly plugged in.
Yeah.
Sometimes stepping away can actually be the best thing for your work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is all really fascinating stuff. We've covered, the dangers of these extreme work hours.
Yeah.
We've looked at some alternative models like these shorter work weeks. But I'm curious, what can companies actually do to create these healthier work environments?
Yeah.
Is it just about changing policies, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more than just changing policies, although that's a great place to start.
Sure.
It's about creating a culture that values well-being as much as it values productivity.
Okay, so how do you actually DO that? What are some tangible steps that companies can take?
Well, one of the most effective things is to encourage what's called restorative practices.
Okay.
This means building in regular breaks throughout the day. And I don't just mean grabbing another cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I'm talking about actually stepping away from your desk, moving your body, getting some fresh air, maybe doing a quick meditation.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of working through lunch and just feeling completely fried by the end of the day.
It's so common, but it's counterproductive. Our
Yeah.
brains aren't designed to be on all the time.
Right.
We need those periods of rest to recharge and refocus.
Makes sense.
One study found that even short breaks, like 5 or 10 minutes, can significantly improve alertness and cognitive performance.
So those little breaks can actually make us more productive in the long run.
Absolutely. And another key aspect is offering flexible work arrangements.
Okay.
This could mean allowing employees to work from home a few days a week, adjust their start and end times, or even take longer breaks during the day to attend to personal matters.
So it's about giving employees some control over their schedules
Yeah,
and trusting them to manage their time effectively.
exactly. And that trust goes a long way in building a positive and supportive work culture. When people feel respected and valued, they're more likely to be engaged and committed to their work.
Makes sense. But what about industries where flexible work arrangements aren't really feasible? Like you can't exactly have a construction worker building a bridge from home, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
There are certainly industries where remote work isn't an option, but even in those cases, there are things companies can do to prioritize well-being.
Okay.
One important step is to foster a strong safety culture.
What does that look like in practice?
It's about making safety a top priority in everything the company does, from training programs to daily operations.
Okay.
It's about encouraging employees to speak up if they see something unsafe and creating a culture where everyone feels responsible for each other's well-being.
And I imagine technology can play a role here as well.
Definitely, there are wearable devices and apps that can monitor things like fatigue levels, heart rate variability, and even sleep patterns.
Wow.
This data can help identify workers who might be at risk for accidents or burnout and allow for early intervention.
So it's like having a personal safety coach on your wrist.
In a way, yes. And some companies are even using virtual reality simulations to train workers on safety procedures in a more engaging and immersive way.
That's really cool. It sounds like technology is becoming an increasingly important tool for promoting workplace safety.
It is, and it has the potential to make a real difference. But we also have to remember that technology is just a tool. It's not a silver bullet. The human element is still crucial.
Right. We can't just rely on gadgets to solve all our problems.
Exactly.
We need strong leadership and a genuine commitment to well-being from the top down.
Couldn't agree more. Leaders need to set the tone by modeling healthy work habits, prioritizing their own well-being, and creating a culture where people feel comfortable talking about stress and burnout.
And that can be a challenge in some work cultures where there's this stigma around admitting you're struggling or needing help.
It absolutely can be, but that's why it's so important to have open conversations about mental health and create a safe space for people to share their experiences.
It's about recognizing that mental health is just as important as physical health and that we all need support from time to time.
Exactly. And when we create a workplace where people feel supported and valued, not only do we reduce the risk of accidents and burnout, we also boost morale, engagement, and ultimately productivity.
It sounds like a win-win for everyone involved.
It is.
We've talked a lot about the benefits of creating a more balanced and supportive work environment, but are there any real-world examples of companies that have successfully implemented these kinds of changes?
Absolutely. There are many companies, big and small, that are leading the way in this area. One great example is Google.
Really?
They've invested heavily in employee well-being programs, including on-site fitness centers, healthy food options, mindfulness training, and generous parental leave policies.
I've heard that Google has these amazing offices with all sorts of perks and amenities, but do those perks actually translate into better well-being and productivity?
Well, their employee satisfaction scores are consistently high, and they're known for having a very innovative and engaged workforce. It's difficult to say definitively whether it's solely due to their well-being programs, but they certainly seem to be doing something right.
And it makes sense when people feel cared for and supported, they're more likely to be creative, productive, and loyal to their company.
Exactly. And it's not just about giant tech companies either. We have a case study here about a small manufacturing firm in the Midwest that implemented a 4-day work week and saw a significant increase in both employee morale and productivity.
Wow. So it's possible for companies of all sizes to make these changes. What were some of the key things this manufacturing company did to make the 4-day work week successful?
They involved their employees in the planning process from the very beginning, which was crucial for getting buy-in and making sure the new schedule worked for everyone.
Okay.
They also focused on streamlining processes and eliminating unnecessary meetings to make the most of their time.
So it's not just about cutting hours, it's about working smarter and making sure every hour counts.
Exactly. And they also make sure to maintain clear communication and provide ongoing support to employees throughout the transition.
It sounds like this company really put a lot of thought and effort into making this work, and it paid off with happier employees and a more productive workplace. It's inspiring to hear these real-world examples of companies putting well-being at the forefront.
It is, and it's a reminder that we don't have to accept the status quo. We can create work environments that are both productive and humane.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the risks of extreme work hours to practical strategies for creating healthier workplaces. But there's one question that keeps coming back to me. If all these benefits are so clear, why are we still seeing this push for longer hours and this glorification of the hustle culture?
That's a great question, and I think it has a lot to do with deeply ingrained beliefs about work and success. We've been conditioned to think that being busy equals being important, and that the more hours you work, the more successful you are.
Right, it's like that old saying, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Exactly. But the research is showing us that this mindset is not only outdated, it's actually harmful. It's leading to burnout, health problems, and decreased productivity.
So we need to shift our thinking and redefine what success looks like. It's not about burning ourselves out. It's about finding a sustainable pace that allows us to do our best work and live fulfilling lives.
I couldn't agree more. It's about working smarter, not harder. It's about prioritizing our well-being and recognizing that rest and recovery are essential for both our personal and professional success.
It's interesting, because we often hear about workplace safety, in the context of physical hazards,
Yeah.
like slips, trips, and falls, things like that.
Right.
But this conversation has really highlighted how mental well-being
Yeah.
is just as important, if not more so, when it comes to preventing those accidents and creating a truly safe work environment.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected. When people are stressed, exhausted, and burned out, they're more likely to make mistakes, take shortcuts, and overlook safety procedures.
It's like driving a car when you're sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, something bad is going to happen.
Exactly.
And it makes you wonder, why aren't we talking about this more? Why is mental health still such a taboo topic in so many workplaces?
I think there's still a lot of stigma attached to mental health.
Yeah.
This idea that it's a sign of weakness or that people should just suck it up and deal with it. But the reality is mental health challenges are incredibly common.
Yeah.
1 in 5 adults in the U.S. experiences mental illness each year, and those numbers have been rising, especially in the wake of the pandemic.
Wow. That's a staggering statistic.
It is.
So it's not just a few isolated cases we're talking about.
No.
This is a widespread issue that we need to address.
Absolutely. And it's not just about addressing it from a humanitarian perspective, although that's certainly important.
Right.
It's also about recognizing the huge impact mental health has on productivity, innovation, and the overall success of organizations.
So it's a smart business decision to invest in employee well-being.
Absolutely. There's a growing body of research showing that companies that prioritize employee well-being have lower healthcare costs, reduced absenteeism, higher employee engagement, and ultimately better financial performance.
So it's good for the bottom line as well.
Exactly.
Seems like common sense, but it's great to see the data backing it up.
It is. And it's not just about big corporations with fancy well-being programs either.
Okay.
Even small businesses can make a huge difference by simply creating a culture of support, encouraging open communication, and providing resources to help employees manage stress and prioritize their mental health.
So what are some concrete things that leaders and managers can do to foster that kind of culture?
One of the most important things is to lead by example. This means prioritizing their own well-being, setting boundaries, and demonstrating that it's okay to take breaks and ask for help when needed. It also means creating a safe space for employees to talk about their struggles without fear of judgment or repercussions.
It's really about walking the walk,
It is.
not just talking the talk,
It's
and showing your employees that you value these things as well.
Absolutely. And it's also about providing training to managers and supervisors so they can recognize the signs of burnout, stress, and mental health challenges in their team members and know how to intervene appropriately.
Okay. So it's about giving them the tools
Right.
to actually support their teams.
Exactly. And it's not just about addressing problems when they arise. It's about proactively promoting well-being.
Okay.
This could mean offering things like flexible work arrangements, mindfulness training, employee assistance programs, or even just creating a dedicated space for relaxation and rejuvenation in the workplace.
So it's really about building that into the culture of the company,
It is.
not just an afterthought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we create a win-win situation where employees are happier, healthier, and more engaged, and organizations are more productive, innovative, and successful.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I
Yeah.
feel like we've really unpacked the complexities of this issue, explored some really promising solutions, but I know we've only scratched the surface.
Right.
There's so much more to learn and discuss. So I guess I'll turn it over to you. What are some things our listeners can do to continue this conversation and maybe even make a difference in their own workplaces?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, I would encourage everyone to share what they've learned from this conversation with their colleagues, their managers, their leaders. Start a dialogue, raise awareness, and advocate for change.
So it's really about being that voice
It is.
for change.
Yeah.
And speaking up about these things.
Absolutely. And there are also some great organizations out there that are doing amazing work in this area. The National Safety Council, for example, has a wealth of resources on workplace well-being, and they offer training programs for both individuals and organizations.
That's a great tip, and we'll be sure to include a link to their website in the show notes.
Perfect.
What else can our listeners do?
Another important step is to be mindful of our own work habits and make sure we're prioritizing our own well-being.
Okay.
This means setting boundaries, taking breaks, getting enough sleep, and making time for activities that bring us joy and recharge our batteries.
It's really about taking care of yourself
It is.
so you can be the best version of yourself at work.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's also about speaking up when we see something that's not right. If we see a colleague struggling or a work culture that's promoting burnout, we need to have the courage to say something and advocate for change.
Yeah, you have to be willing to speak up.
Absolutely.
It's not always easy, but
Not always easy, but it's important.
it's how we make a difference.
Exactly.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. This has been an incredibly valuable conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in to Key Safety Talks. We hope you found this episode insightful and thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Remember, a healthy and balanced work environment is not just a nice-to-have. It's essential for both individual and organizational success.
Couldn't agree more.
Until next time, stay safe and well.